Hi, this is Ellie Fishman, and welcome to our latest Facebook Live. Today's Wednesday, and I know we try to do it on Thursdays, but tomorrow I have this retreat, so we got to do it on Wednesday. I want to wish everybody a happy end of summer, but you know, it's with global warming, the summer will go on for 3 more months, but it's the end of August, and we have to go back to school or something like that. It's Labor Day weekend. My grandson's 2, so life is good. Anyway, so I'm going to speak to you about discoveries in radiology, and I was trying to figure out what to talk about this week. And I have to give a talk tomorrow at this retreat, which is on, in a sense, discovery, what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong. And I thought perhaps we could step back and think about what it is we do, particularly in academics. So whether you're private practice or academics, certain roles are very much the same. You have to read films, you got to be a good consultant, you got to take care of the patients. That doesn't change. But if you're in academics, another part of our mission is discovery. We have to figure out new things, new techniques, new interpretations. So we're working on deep learning, trying to read the scans, replace the radiologist, the usual deep learning story. We optimize scan protocols. We publish a lot of CTisus protocols and articles. We publish 50 articles a year because we publish, because we try to share the information that we develop. It's a very important part of what we do. But in looking at the institution, and I'm not talking about Hopkins specifically, I'm talking about every institution. Think about any place you are. If you're in a big academic place, or if you're not in an academic place, think about the place you trained. I think the process now is undergoing a lot of problems. Now, everyone is going to say that the financial issues, money is getting tighter, research dollars are getting smaller, and all of that is undoubtedly true. And we've been complaining about research dollars and money and funding forever, right? Probably Rankin was complaining, and there's an article from Rankin to Siemens. He bought his X-ray tubes from Siemens, complaining about the cost of the X-ray tubes. The X-ray tubes were so expensive, and how could he do his work if the X-ray tubes were so expensive? So complaining about the cost or not having enough money or needing more resources, that's going to be here for the next billion years, okay, if we all last that long. But the question is, really, how do you do things? How do you move forward without just talking about it? And I kind of look at companies on, the Apples and the NVIDIAs and the Microsofts and the Facebooks and the Pixars and the Disneys, Google, AMD. How do you always come up with new things? You think about a company, okay, let's take Silicon Graphics. They were the big dog in the 80s and 90s, up to 2000 or so, maybe a little bit less than 2000. They had the greatest computers, hardware, it was expensive, 150 to 200K. We had some of them. They were the way you do 3D imaging. They then came up with a smaller version, something called an O2, but they never transitioned to the cheap PCs or the equivalent of boards. And in fact, we work with Silicon Graphics. Derek Nye did this incredible work on these $15,000 or $20,000 SGI workstations, cheap workstations. They were incredible. And the product was canceled. Why? Not that people wouldn't want it or not that it's incredible, but they knew how to sell $150,000, $250,000 boxes. And they said, well, if they have $15,000 boxes that are better than the $250, no one will buy the $250. So they just killed the project. They didn't think for a second, okay, you came up with a new box, but someone else will, Dell will, or some other company will. And so sure enough, someone else came up with boards, the NVIDIAs, the Dells. Someone else came up with cheaper PCs, and then Silicon Graphics was out of business. It went from here to there, okay? And in fact, today, if you want to go to Silicon Graphics campus in Mountain View, California, there's a company called Google on that campus, sitting on their graves. And when you're at Google, they'll tell you that we look at Silicon Graphics knowing they were here, knowing how great they were, and it's a lesson for us knowing that if we cannot innovate, if we cannot move forward, we run the risk of becoming just somebody who was a little blip in the course of history. So in order to survive, in order to excel, you have to move forward. And I've always felt that you can't sit still. okay? You're either moving backwards or you're moving forwards. No one just maintains what they do. And so when you look at companies like Apple, you're releasing a new iPhone in a month or so, in October, a little more than a month. Every year there's a new iPhone. Every year people complain that it's expensive, but it's an incredible phone. Does a whole bunch of incredible things that you couldn't do last time. And then every May or so, they come up with a MacBook, which I love. I got my new MacBook. And they come up in between. You have an iPad and all the other stuff that Apple does. NVIDIA, Jensen Huang announced 2 weeks ago their Turing chip. Thousands of times faster, much more flexibility, just incredible, changing the face of visualization, amongst many other things that it will change. And that chip took a number of years to build. Someone had to be thinking about it several years ago, thinking about all the challenges it will take for their chip and what it needed to be. When Jensen Huang was here, he spoke about how you can't listen to your best customers or your friends. You need to be thinking where you need to be. Because it's like the Henry Ford thing. If Henry Ford asked people what they wanted when they were riding horses, they would say faster horses. No one would have conceptualized the car. And I'm sure at NVIDIA today, they're working on the next chip and the chip after that, because the new product is a new product that will need to be replaced. And so the cycle is very fast. In medicine, with discovery, that's one of our challenges. I just wonder, perhaps, if everyone is too complacent, there doesn't seem to be a rush. Companies rush. Now, rushing is not the same thing as being sloppy, because if you come up with a new chip, a new computer, a new board, a new software program, it needs to work perfectly. But you don't have an infinite time to do it, because if you don't do it, someone else will. If you don't do it in a timely fashion, someone else will, and you will not exist. Medicine, in some sense, we have, a built-in audience. People are born young, at 0, and they die. All of us will at some point die. Hopefully, it'll be a long time, and hopefully from birth to death, you have minimal blips in your life, but people do get sick. Nature has its way of making us all have moments which are not perfect. But we need to figure out, how is it that we can improve the lot of people? We talk about imaging. Can we detect disease earlier so that we can intervene earlier? Can we stage correctly? Can we detect early? Can we prevent invasive processes that don't need to be done? Can we use imaging as a way of thinking about how patients should be treated? In those CT scans with radiomics and deep learning, we should be able to extract information that will impact management, know what works or what doesn't work, connect imaging with the genetic code, really put all that together. That becomes very critical. But are we in a rush? People seem to be in a rush to get a grant, and then they got 3 years to get the next grant, and their total focus is on getting the next grant. It's not really on the science. You don't want to be dramatic, but as someone told me recently, that while you're working on your projects, people are dying. Our job is to find cures and find discovery and find it fast. You can't be sloppy and find things fast, but you can't be leisurely taking a walk. Perhaps we need to think more about how we do things, and think how the Apples of the world, or NVIDIAs of the world, or the Googles of the world do things. Yes, you can argue they're driven by their profit margins and their stock price, but that's okay. You develop something, you discover something, you deserve all the money you're going to make. And within that profit, the rest of us do benefit. So it's a perfect deal. It's really what you want to see and what you want to do. So what I'm asking is, how can we accelerate what we do to be like them? Because I don't think people have the intensity. Now, you could say, okay, there's a work-life balance, and you could read a really good article in Press and JACR about that work-life balance by the road not taken. And we said that, there is a price to pay for really going all out. There's a time commitment. There's only 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and perhaps you want to spend it many different ways. Family is critical, your kids, your grandkids, spouse, all those things need to fit into the puzzle. But the flip is, we are here to do something special. We're not baking donuts or whatever you do with donuts. We need to figure out how is it that we cannot lose that sense of urgency, that we need to do things now. Things need to happen. You need the intensity, you need the focus, and you need the fire under you. At times, I think we spend so much effort being politically correct, being whatever the words are now of social media about this, that, and the other, which I won't go into, so I'm not socially incorrect. But I think at some times, you need to be able to be critical. You need to be able to argue. Now, arguing is not the same thing as saying bad things about people's genetic heritage. Arguing is simply disagreeing. People now seem to think that if you disagree, you're a difficult person and you're not a team player. I say the opposite. If you don't disagree, you're not engaged. You don't need to disagree for the sake of disagreeing. This is not like some TV show or something. You need to disagree when you think what's going on is not the right way, or if you know a better way. Disagreeing is not bad. I think one of the things, you look at some of the people you admire, one of their strengths was they were able to be different. They were able to disagree, some people a little bit more aggressively than others. I know there's a fine line between that. But on the other hand, if you want discovery, if you want to push the envelope, if you're fighting against a time barrier, you need truth. You need Apollo 13. It's worthwhile to watch the Apollo 13 movie. When Gene Cernan says failure is not an option. When they knew what they had to do and they had minimal resources, they could rehearse and plan. But if they did something wrong, it was all over. Apollo 13, the people would have died. The capsule would have crashed. It was only because they were forced to make decisions. They were forced to put things together. They were forced to argue, but argue against a measurable point. Remember the voltage? They only had a certain amount of voltage, a certain amount of energy. It wasn't a matter of you could do it in 25 volts if it only had 20. You need to get everything lined up or you would fail. And this failure is not an option is maybe a good way of thinking about things. You could argue that's very dramatic, but that's what was said when they were in the middle of the crisis. Failure is not an option because if they couldn't find a solution, those 3 men would have died. And with them, a lot of our dreams. But it was that critical moment where you were forced to make a decision. You were forced to argue and work things out and try many different combinations, each of which failed over and over again until one finally succeeded. And you succeeded before the clock ran out. And you're able to do it, and you're able to bring those astronauts home so they could live long lives. And in many ways, that failure was, in many ways, the greatest success of the space program. More people remember Apollo 13 than Apollo 11, which is Neil Armstrong landing on the moon. People know we landed on the moon. All right, kicked up some dust, next case. So I think it's that process, to me, that's very exciting. Now the question is, how do you do that? That's an interesting thing. How do you align things where you are mission critical, that you need to finish the project now? You need to act like lives were depending on it. I think maybe people need to hold people to higher standards. There's a thing these days, it seems to me, where good enough is good enough. And I think good enough may be good enough if you're playing Monopoly. But I'm telling you, when I play Monopoly, good enough is not good enough. You have to win the game. You got to get all the money, you got to win all the properties. And so, perhaps we're in an era where everybody gets a trophy and everything is good enough. And I'm here to say to you, and the answer to that question, is good enough enough? It's just not. I think good enough is not going to come up with discovery. Good enough is not going to come up with things that impact our lives and make all of us live longer, improve the everything that goes on for our patients, our families, and the like. So if you're interested, if you have the capabilities, if you have chosen to pursue that career, there's never been a better time to be in the field of discovery. The computers, the technology, the opportunities have never been greater, male or female. It's just never been greater. But at some point, you need to come up and say, hey, I'm willing to commit. And I think that's all we can ask is people committing to go all out, not committing at 0.4%, committing at 1.0. And with that, I used up my time. Have a great last few days of August, and I'll see you in September. And I think that was the Tokens or the Silhouettes who sang that song. See you in September. Anyway, catch you guys later. Bye.